Greetings to all. Research Culture Society is a government-registered scientific research organization. Society is working for the research community at national and international level to impart quality and non-profitable services. Our members are scholarly educationists from various universities and institutes of repute. Here the faculties, research scholars and students interested in the area of research are given guidance and support in how their work can contribute to the betterment of our present and future generations. Research Culture Society is conducting conferences, seminars, symposiums, workshops, training, and development programs on different themes. Society has organized 100+ educational programs successfully at national and international level in association with different educational institutions. Also published selected research papers as journal special issues and book proceedings. Society is running international level referred, peer-reviewed journals with ISSN and books publication with ISBN. Educational institutions, colleges, universities are being welcomed for Memorandum of Understanding and collaboration to organize events. Society is promoting and sponsoring educational events as well as publishing research work in collaboration. The Society also offers membership. The journals associated with Research Culture Society are referred, indexed, and with high impact factor. Society journals are publishing research papers, articles in all major fields and subjects related to sciences, health sciences, engineering, agriculture, pharmacy, commerce, management, social sciences, arts, humanities, education, law and life skills. Journals provide publications and digital identification with a nominal processing charge. Research Culture Society also provides print and online book publications with ISBN. Society invites book publication in all study subjects and categories. Thesis converted into book and conference proceedings publication also available. Research Culture Society arranges special lectures on soft skills, communication skills, personality development, behavior improvement, human resource development, career development, general knowledge improvement, environmental issues, and improvement, etc. in different institutions, colleges, universities, and schools. The Society bestows excellence and achievement awards in different categories as US Awards, SRA Awards. Thank you. For further details,
On literature, society, and the global studies. This conference is organized by Research Culture Society, the Department of Media Studies, and Scientific Research Association. Research Culture Society is a government-registered scientific research organization. Society is working for research community at national and international level to impart quality and non-profitable services. Research Culture Society conducts conferences, seminars, symposiums, workshops, training, and the development programs on different themes. Society has successfully organized 100+ educational programs at national and international level in association with different reputed institutions. The Department of Media Studies, an integral part of GEN, deemed to be university, that is in Bangalore, India, offers an entry into the ever-evolving world of global media and the dream university experience that merges the best of both uh, world academics and media. And Scientific Research Association is working on to promote scientific study research at international level, also coordinate with other research organizations for the educational research events. I'm Purvasha Mandal. I'll be coordinating this session. I'm also going to chair this session with Dr. Deepa Chakraborty, who is HOD uh, in School of Languages at Amity University, Jaipur, Rajasthan, and Dr. J.H. Khatri, who is an assistant professor in the Department of School of Liberal Studies and Education affiliated in Navarachana University, Vadodara. So in this session, we have 15 paper presenters, and each presenter they have to present their paper in 8 minutes. So I'd like to request all the presenters to finish their papers in time. All the presenters, you be ready with your PPT if you have. And participants, if you have any question to any of these presenters, you can write your question or observation or comment in the chat box, and we can take your questions at the end of the session. So we will start this session by 1:30.
Good afternoon, one and all. I'm Dr. Surekha Patil, Assistant Professor in English, Institute of Technology, Nirma University, that is in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, with my friend, Professor Adila Nakuda. She is Assistant Professor in English, that is also one of the Institute of Technology, that is in Surat, Gujarat. We both are from Gujarat. And the title of our research paper is this one, that is about the Indian cinema reflects the misogynistic attitude of patriarchy towards the women. In this research paper, actually, we have used two terms. First, about the misogynistic, and second, that is the gynocentric. So let me tell you about the misogynistic. Misogynistic, that is the feeling showing or characterized by hatred or prejudice against women. As we know, Indian society is a male-ruled, where women have been dignified, inferior to men in practical life. Even today, women are forbidden from participating in many domestic as well as external matters, particularly which require decision making. And the second term which we have used in our research paper, that is about the gynocentrism. Gynocentrism, gyno, that is a female, centrism, that is a center. So we are female-oriented society. Female-oriented issues, we can say here. That is the term which is ideologically focused on a female and matters affecting her life. Gynocentrism gives importance to women's wishes, desires, and their attitudes towards life. But all these things are missing in practical society. And that's why we have worked on that gynocentrism. It offers as an alternative framework for the interpretation of a women's literary history. Abstract of our research paper is that it means our research is to appraise and interpret the glimpses of a women in an Indian culture. As a female, actually, we have thought a lot, and then after we have worked on that. So women face quite of a social issues and problems all through their life and become sufferers silently from the beginning of their life. Actually, that is the main issue of women. It is to just behave like a silent sufferer, and that is in our Indian culture. Women in Indian culture considered as a misfortune and a burden for their parents, not for the parents, but for the life partners also, as they believe that women are only to consume money the whole life. They are mere liability. In the Indian society, women have been considered as an ordinary creature compared to men in every phase of a life. And that's why that is the main issue of a women, which is focused here. And Indian cinema, if we are talking about the Indian cinema, so that is the mirror of a society. What is there in a society that is reflected in a cinema, as it represents female in context to male point of view. Female is treated like a property of a someone who does not have own identity. women have been facing so many plights because of a male-dominated and patriarchal social system. Moreover, in modern age also, we are facing the same thing. Women are facing the same problem and gender roles embodied on a women. Now here, actually in that research paper, the main objectives of is that we just have focused on a gynocentrism and misogynistic approach. And then the second thing is here, we have worked on the qualities. What about the qualities of a gynocentric and what about the qualities of a misogynistic? And after that, we have compared these two terms with each other. The brief summary of this paper is that it's about the study of misogyny in Indian cinema. In these films, women have been the victim of injustice in an Indian society. The content analysis focuses on representation of women-centered issues. The cinema is serious and artistic in its exemplification, and it reflects the issues to bring revolution through its depiction. The main repercussion of this paper is that representation of women in such films encourages social change in the treatment of women in Indian society. As we have discussed that Indian cinema, particularly here about the cinema is the mirror of a society. So whatever is shown in that Indian cinema, that is also reflected on a society. And that's why these are the things which we can see in that Indian cinema. And now here, characteristics. Because if we are talking about the 90s cinema, so here, particular type of roles were given to the female characters, like here, subordinate role function. It means protagonist, mother, or maybe wife or a lover. Alternative role function. Alternative role function, like here, just maybe a dancer or only the source of entertainment, we can say, and compromises personal interest, at least on a one occasion or for the sake of the family. And career orientation, even career orientation, so typical career orientation is given to her, like to take care of her kids, to take care of her family, to take care of her in-laws. So that is her career objective. Then purity, after that devoted, and then here we can say symbolism of a virtue. So here female should be like a goddess. That is the mindset of Indian society, and even actually in our epics also that is given. If you're talking about Mahabharata or if you're talking about Ramayana, so female character should be like a Sita, Gandhari, or maybe Savitri. So just like a goddess, she should have to behave. So these are the characteristics of the misogynistic. But here in an Indian cinema, sometimes we can see it means we know that that is the mass conception which plays a key role in molding opinions, constructing images, and reinforcing dominant cultural values. And the paper deals with the representation of women characters in the mainstream Bollywood. And with the context to that, we had taken 3 films here: Daman, Lajja, and Sat Khun Maaf. The conclusion of our research paper is that Hindi cinema has encompassed various aspects in their depiction of women, but still there is a long way to go. Awaiting these women-centric films become a part of a regular Bollywood cinema. In fact, in the past 10 years, there has been an outpouring in the women-centric cinema, and these films have tried to convey positive messages regarding the strength and power of women in the Indian society. So now here, that is the conclusion of our paper. And at last, I would like to say one of the changes which we can see nowadays in a female, that is about the identity. If we are talking about the female identity, so after marriage, she should have to accept the surname of in-laws. But nowadays here, women is not changing their name, but actually they are accepting everything with the changes. Just like here, okay, just one of the examples I would like to give you. So we are expecting we are accepting our names also, and then in-laws names also. So now here, suppose example of mine, so Surekha Patil Chaudhary. So I'm not changing my identity, but with my identity, I'm accepting the other's identity. So this kind of changes, that is just because of a cinema or just because of a media, we can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Surekha Patil, for wonderful presentation. Now, I'd like to request Feril Irham Mujaki to present his paper on personality development on fictional superhero movie.
Okay, thank you for the chance. Can you hear my voice? Hello, can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can. You're perfectly audible.
Okay, thank you for the chance. Now, I would like to share my paper on personality development on fictional superhero movie. With me, Feril Iramuzaki from Department of Primary Education, Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Malang. Okay, the first concept that we have to talk is what is inner child actually, the basic concept in this paper. Okay, now, according to Pularkova and Karpova on 2021 stated that inner child is actually a concept that describes the childish traits and attitudes that everyone may have. Thus, inner child has a child behavior on adult life, which means the inner child have to be treated carefully as part of daily life. And the third one, the inner child may reject the facts in real life experience. Do that, it could be a trigger of delusion experience, an experience that is never existed, but it sounds real. So, in order that, we have to talk about maturity according to Aktil et al. Explain that maturity has two concepts based on the ages and behavior. Based on the ages, maturity means being able to do tasks through biological ages. And based on behavior, maturity reflects the capability to act in appropriate ways. Okay, let's talk about superhero movie. Superhero movie has close meaning to genre narrative. So superhero movie also related on good versus bad, hero versus evil, and other things, according to Fu in 2017. And superhero movies make everything look simple and make everything easy to be solved. Okay, the method of this study, we are using content analysis conducted by using method by Flynn in 2017. The source of the data is taken from superhero movies from 2005 to 2021. The data form into sentences that superhero characters spoken in movies, and the data is being analyzed is contrasting the superhero characters spoken word with self-maturity theories. Right? Okay. And the sentence, this is the first result. Sentence considered to encourage life development. So there are three sentences here. You could read it by yourself. And I think the sentence reflect to you have to improve yourself to be better person in your next step of life. The next one is you could read it. Okay, the sentence explain talk about life. This is so in short, the sentence talk about how a person or people take responsibility on their own life. Okay, the third one is sentences projected to talk about the future. This is the message from the sentences is we have to think futuristics. Okay. And the last one, the sentence manifest to confirm about prime of life. I mean, in this case, we have to focus on what is the purpose of our life here. Okay, this is interesting. And sentence, the last one, sentence mark to describe the maturity. Okay, this is talk about how we have to behave based on our maturity in our life. So in the okay, in the conclusion, the theory maturity is related on the learning process. In this case, material of motivational sentences, even though it is taught to teach opportunities for children to design the characters. In this case also, the content of superhero movie is focused on high class age. Is given the complexity of the story, which still needs to assistance from parents. Animated film for children are films that mostly aim at the text development, motivational based sentences made visible in the film. Okay, this is the references. And thank you for the chance.
Thank you, Feril Irham, for your interesting paper. The next presenter is Dr. Sadiq Ali Hassanuzzaman. The title of his paper is Ordinary Language a Genuine Method in Doing Philosophy and Analysis? So now I'd like to request Dr. Sadiq Ali Hassanuzzaman to present his paper. Dr. Sadiq Ali, are you with us?
Ma'am,
Are you with us?
hello?
Yes. Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
I ask
Yes, now we can see your screen.
May I visit? Audible?
Yes, you are perfectly audible.
I am Hassan Jaman, a research scholar of Gorbanga University, West Bengal.
Hello.
But we can't
May I
see
start?
your PPT.
So Sadiq Ali, what you can do, click on share screen,
Yes, yes.
and select your PPT file, not to select the screen. There will be no options. You will see there are some options below also. On your paper or PPT file,
May I
click on
deliver
the share
the
screen.
PPT? Okay.
Yes, now we can see your PPT.
The title of is Ordinary Language, a Genuine Method in Doing Philosophy and Analysis. The abstract of my paper is the abstract of my paper is language holds the central position in analytic philosophy. Philosophy is nothing but the analysis of language. All philosophical problems are generated due to misunderstanding of language. But the very nature, what should be the very nature of language? This is the serious problem in philosophy. Although all analytic philosophers would agree about the matter that the study of language is great important, but there is no general agreement about the language, nature of language. The ordinary language and ideal language tussle was outcome of this disagreement. The genesis of this tussle actually hinges on the question that does language require revision or ordinary language is a genuine method in doing philosophy. Therefore, we can say that the linguistic perception of the philosophy of language perception has broadly divided into two classes, ideal language philosophers and ordinary language philosophers. The leading component of ideal language philosophers are Russell, early Wittgenstein, Frege, Carnap, etc. On the other hand, ordinary philosophers, a leading component of ordinary philosophers are Wisdom, Malcolm, later Wittgenstein, Ryle, etc. Now I discuss about the what is the ideal language and what is ordinary language. Ideal language is a type of language which is an artificial or a logical language not always on our tongue of everyday men. Such type of language is free from all ambiguity, vagueness, and unpersuasiveness. On the other hand, the ordinary language, ordinary means common or natural or on the tongue of every man. Therefore, we can say ordinary language is a kind of language which is common people use to day-to-day life. Such type of language is more comprehensive and wider. Some philosophers have concluded that artificial languages are little helpful in our doing philosophy. Therefore, I first try to show that the methods of ordinary languages. Ordinary language is ambiguous. Russell, in responding to questions, what make ordinary language imperfect, including to say that ordinary language is ambiguous. There are two types of ambiguity in ordinary language, such as semantic ambiguity arising out of the part of language and the semantic ambiguity arising out of the use of language externally. According to Russell, a sentence is actually asymptotically ambiguous if it is ambiguous and there is no way of account of ambiguity or by holding that one or more words in the sentence are ambiguous. On the other hand, as far as the semantic ambiguity is concerned, some ordinary words are ambiguous in a way that tempts us to take a faulty account of how they work. For example, the word is, to be verb is, Russell says that there are different semantic roles. When we say the morning star is evening star is morning star, then the to be verb is means equal. But when we say that Socrates Socrates is a man, then the is, to be verb is means belong to. When we say that man is mortal, then the to be verb is here indicated a predicate term. Therefore, we can say the ordinary language is ambiguous. In this sense, we can also say that ordinary language is vague because, according to Russell, the ordinary language is vague because it cannot reflect our true picture of reality. Ordinary language also misleads us. Russell goes on to say that ordinary language, that is the language in English, actually mislead because at times we regard the quantifier and description as names. Our revisional language cannot mislead us. Therefore, according to the revisionalist or idealist philosopher, that the only language that can realize the true picture of reality, which is the ideal language. Therefore, and at the concluding remark, we can say that ordinary language is more wider. It is we day-to-day life communicated with each other by the ordinary language. Therefore, ordinary language must be significant, but some difficulties arises in ordinary language we can overcome by uh, replacing one ordinary language with two other ordinary languages. This is my main conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sadek Ali. Any question for Sadek Ali?
Hasanuজ্জামান ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your paper.
Thanks.
The next presenter is Dr. M.A. Afzal Farooq. The title of his paper is Women Education in India Through Feminist Lenses, Critiquing Taslima Nasrin's No Country for Women.
Oh, a question, Dr. Mandal. The person who presented before his name was Hasanujaman.
Yes, Dr. Sadiq Ali Hasanujaman. Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am, do you have any question?
No, I have just one question to Hasanujaman, whether the language we are talking is considering to be an ordinary language. What is his take on that? He's talking about ordinary language, right? And ideal language. Can you give an example of both?
Dr. Sadiq Ali, please respond to Professor Deepa Chakraborty's question. Yes.
Ordinary language is that we day-to-day life use. On the other hand, philosophical language or logical language is called ideal language. For example, all x, all values of x or px implies rx. It is a logical language or a philosophical language.
Okay, understood. Okay.
On the other hand, if we say that Socrates is a philosopher, then it is a ordinary language.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
All right. So now I'd like to request Dr. Eme Afzal Farouk to present his paper.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Respected chairperson and delegates from different parts of the India, feminist lances critiquing Taslima Nasrin's No Country for Women. Objective of the paper is to understand and analyze women education in India from feminist point of view and the journey of women education this far. Methodology of the paper that I've adopted is a close textual analysis. The Taslima Nasrin is a name who hardly needs an introduction. She has been hitting the newspaper headlines. She has been in the electronic media quite often. And the entire world knows her to be a radical feminist who has been engaged in her efforts to give a kind of upliftment to the status of women. She has been a humanist, and most of the writings that she has done, most of the things that she has written, in every literary product, she has always advocated for women emancipation and upliftment of women. The text that I've chosen is a text called Narir Kono Desh Nai. This is, what she titled it, and this book has been titled, has been translated as No Country for Women. Now, the paper that I have penned down falls into two distinct categories. Two distinct parts. The first part is about the history of women education in India since the Vedic period down to the present time. And the second part of the paper focuses on Taslima Nasrin's claims as reflected in various essays in the book called Narir Kono Desh Nai. Before I go to the main part of the paper, I'm making a humble effort, to draw attention to the fact that Taslima Nasrin is a feminist who envisions a society which is clean. She envisions a society, a culture which is clean. Now, the word clean that I'm using needs to be understood because she has always been harping on one thing, that is patriarchy has been causing a kind of cataclysm to women. So she identifies three principal premises, three principal agents that keep women downtrodden, and hence many a time women are deprived of education. The principal agents that she identifies are: number one, religion; number two, culture; number three, society. So since the society consists of both men and women, so men and women should be equally treated in the society. Many a time she is she purposely tries to blame the government. She says the government doesn't pay the required attention to the women, and because of that there is a kind of disconnect between the women and the government. And since the government, in the government we have most of the patriarchs, that's why women are given a kind of cold shoulder. That is how, many times she tries to project. In her essay called Man Enjoys Rights, Women Enjoy Responsibility, Women Shoulder Responsibilities. In this essay published in the book Nari Grundeshna, she says, I quote, as citizen of a state, women do not enjoy the same status as men do. They should enjoy it is no new proposition. By citing heaps of facts and theories, men have shown what was the condition of women in the past, where it has reached through evolution, and the yawning gap that still exists between where they are and where they should be. That is to say, the cinema strain comes down heavily, on the intellectuals as well, who talk about the progress of women, who talk about the upliftment of women. And she says that there are writings on women, they should prosper, they should progress, they should be taken to the pedestal of progress, but that is not happening. So she pinpoints that these are things which are doing the round in books and in the intellectual circles. But what is the ground reality? The ground reality remains the same. Women are given a cold shoulder, they are given a backseat. Had women been given the proper facilities and the status they require, the status they deserve, then perhaps women would not have been as subjugated as they have been through the ages. Nastran claims that education for the masses of India has a priority. She puts this priority within inverted commas and says, this priority, despite the nation's agrarian history, the Indian nation's history is agrarian, and India has a priority for women education. She interrogates whether the priority of education was equally for women in India, thus expressing her deep-seated reservations. She is convinced by the fact that the priority of education, which we claim that holds good for women as well, had it been applied to women proportionately, then perhaps women would not, the percentage of women education would have been at par with men. That is not the reality. Taslima says, Indian women keep on waiting with their fingers crossed, hoping that some magnanimous soul will emerge and lift them from the thorns of life, unquote. As a radical feminist, many a time, Taslima cries her heart out and says that despite all her writings, it seems there is a vicious force working against her, and her messages are not reaching out to the target group, reaching out to the people. And she says that in the society, women need to be familiarized with the need of education, which will make them understand their own selves. That is, it is through education, by educating women, that women can be made to understand who they are and the inherent power they have in them. And this is something that is not happening. Taslima tries to launch a kind of massive attack on the patriarchs, saying that it is the patriarchal trick, it is the patriarchal strategy to keep the women subordinated by depriving them of the real education they need. She comes down heavily even on the educated women of India, and she says that women, though educated, they are still not fighting for their own rights. The educated women, according to Taslima, become more docile than the uneducated ones. So she says that the true meaning of education is to liberate people, and women should be educated in a way that they understand that their liberation is important, their liberation is a priority. So that kind of education needs to be imparted to women. And she focuses more on secular education to be imparted to women. And she says that it is through secular education that women can be made to understand that they are really great and that they are cache of power. As I conclude, as a radical feminist, Nasrin's in Indian society. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. M.F. Afzal, for your wonderful paper, really fascinating. You've already said that this text you've taken up is originally written in Bengali, and you're working on the translated one. So what's the basic difference between the main text and the the translated version
Can I speak?
you spoke on? Yeah.
There are a lot of differences. So once it comes to a translation, a lot of things get distorted, because in one of I don't know whether you'll be understanding Bengali or not. I think there are some scholars here whom I can see here. They will be understanding surely. In one of her sentences, she says, "Bharatbharsher Mera." Now, let me translate into English. The Indian women, they have been subjugated for ages, and here, particularly the Muslim women, they are more subjugated than the women from other social and cultural backgrounds, religious backgrounds. And she says that this the backwardness of the Muslim women is primarily because they are deprived of education that they need. And it seems their religion, the religion itself, has made some kind of boundaries, depriving them of their education. Now, as you asked me that translated and the original text, yeah, there are differences, because many a time, a lot of things, which were there in the original Bengali texts, they were not to be found in the target text, in the translated text. A lot of distortions were there. However, the essence, of the original text, that was retained in the target text.
That means you have first read the Bengali text.
Yes, because I know Bengali.
Then you became interested, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, if you have any more questions.
Yeah, I'm from Bengal, so I'm very interested in this, in the original text. So, any more questions for Dr. M.A. Afzal Farooq. Yes, Chiluka Pushpalata, please.
Deepa ma'am might have a question.
Not really. I don't have a question. I found it very clear, logical, and well presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chiluka Pushpalata, if you have any question for Dr. M.A. Afzal Farooq, you can ask him directly.
Yeah, hello. I would like to know exactly the period what he was saying that in India the woman is being, like where they doesn't have any rights and they were not even being allowed to be in a open mannerly. But whereas even I have seen that it is not no more like that. Usually in India, from the day one to till now, India, the females are really playing a very major and important role. So I would like to know particularly on what basis where he has studied, where he says that the woman is not being, given up a lots of freedom on in the education part.
Can I answer?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very good question she's asking. See, my paper deals with the scenario of education in India right from the time of the Vedic period down to the present time. And as I concluded, as I gave my findings, in my findings, if you had listened to my last, point that I made in the conclusion, I said clearly that one witnesses remarkable changes in the scenario of education of women education in Indian society today. That is how I ended my paper. Right. So in the Vedic period, we had a lot of great female scholars. We had Apala, we had Ghosha, we had Lopamadra. So they were great scholars. Lopamadra, she became a saint as well. So India was giving that kind of space to women, but what kind of a space was it? The first question is, what kind of a space was it that when thousands of men enjoyed freedom to study, only 3 or 4, Lopamadra, what do you call this, Ghosha, Apala, they were the few that would keep harping on. Were there no other women who could have been as educated as the men were? That is our question. But today, the scenario has changed. Now, if you look at the schemes that the government has launched today, particularly the present dispensation, political dispensation, PM Narendra Modi's political career as Prime Minister, we have seen a lot of schemes which are for women. So women are being liberated. They are being given the due. But the stimulus point is women need to be given more space. I hope I could answer your query.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to request Dr. Ruchi Tomar
yes,
to present her paper on From Text to Hypertext, Changing Paradigm of Electronic Literature.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Is my paper?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Now, a very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Dr. Ruchi Tomar. I'm here to present my paper titled From Text to Hypertext, Changing Paradigm of Electronic Literature. Now, first point is era of digitization and technology. Even COVID-19 also left us among the electronic literature when most of the colleges and universities have closed and only online education can be taken into consideration. Lives have changed from reading the text to digital hypertext and how it affects individual, societal, behavioral, and in the psychological manner. Hence, technology is touching every area of social life. So, how the literary studies can be disassociated with this new media? Literary media has changed from the books to computer, then towards networked media. Therefore, electronic literature is giving a threat and a challenge to the traditional approach of education. Pen is a matter of past, and nowadays we have computational knowledge, hypertext readings, use of pen on phones, and digital computation in general. Poetry, for example, where language is figurative and meaning consists of linguistic signification, but in electronic literature it has linguistic signification, but it's with performance and manifestation. The new media excels the regular text and its writing to visual, sonic, and performative element. It is basically the combination of human and machine language. Electronic literature comprises literary works that require digital computation, act an important corrective to the hegemony of the screen, and the clear delineation between digital and non digital works without exaggerating the novelty of digital culture. Now we have the waves of electronic literature. In the first generation, we had hypertext, kinetic, and text-based, which were published between 1952 and 1995. Then we have second generation, the rise of web in 1995, and which continues to the present as well. Then we have third generation, social media networks, apps, mobiles, and web API services, which began around 2005. So all these works have made important and significant contributions to understanding the field of electronic literature. There are few examples of electronic literature. Judy Malloy's Roger, which was first released in 1986 as a serial. John McDade, Uncle Buddy's Phantom Funhouse, which was a hypertext novel. Shelley's Jackson, Patchwork Girl, which was originally published in 1995 on 3.5 floppy disk. And the last one we have Bill V. Descent, which initially appeared in 1997. And these are the genres of electronic literature. First, we have hypertext fiction. Hypertext fiction are new genres of literature that use the computer screen as medium rather than the printed page. The literary works rely on the qualities unique to a digital environment, such as World Wide Web pages, or effects such as sound and movement. Then second, we have kinetic poetry. It is an interactive form that allows you to use words on the screen. It can often be seen in music videos. Basically, the music videos can contain different type of font, colors, and the words which usually move around in different directions. Third, we have interactive fiction or the drama. It is a real-time storytelling format reacting to input from players. As the development of technology, including sound, graphic, and mass storage media, it became harder to recognize difference between the interactive fiction and computer game. Fourth, we have locative narratives. It is characterized by location technology such as GPS technology. It embedded their story to a particular location using the technology, and users read or listen to them using a mobile device. Then we have generative text. It is a category of generative art which use algorithm to generate, randomize, and rearrange existing text. Then we have flash poem or the cyber poems. In a flash poem, a line or a word transform itself, dancing, falling, twisting, and disappearing. These are few pros of electronic literature, how it is beneficial for all. First is accessibility, because electronic literature books can be got from any place on any gadget. Different reading material can fit inside a single phone or tablet. Indeed, superior. Online course readings are never out of stock. Second, we have online resources. Within an internet, one can get a supplemental fabric at the thrust of the button. Third, we have environment friendly. Digital textbooks are much easier on the environment. Hardcover textbooks also become outdated quickly, leading to a large amount of wasted paper. Fourth, we have easy to find information. In a traditional textbook, finding needed information can be time consuming. With digital books, a quick search can deliver the information very fast. Then to conclude, I must say that electronic literature is an amazingly different field, joining a tremendous cluster of tasteful standards and experimentations, and will proceed to advance. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruchi Tomar, for your wonderful paper. Now, participants, you have any questions, you can ask her directly.
Good
All
afternoon,
right.
Dr. Ruchi. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Ruchi, you have made a very good presentation. I would also like to know that do you observe some level of thematic changes in this new form of literature?
Pardon, sir. I'm unable to hear the question. Can you repeat it?
Do you find any thematic changes in this new form of literature? Changes with the level of themes and the content that is being presented?
Hello.
Am I audible to others?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please tell her if you have got my question?
Dr. Ruchi Tomar, can you hear us?
The Lord Song, that is the philosophical discourse of Lord Krishna to persuade the reluctant Arjuna to fight. It is the most popular and sacred book of the Hindus and is contained in the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata, the greatest Sanskrit epic. The Gita is the highest treasure amongst the spiritual and philosophical positions, not only of the Hindus, but of the whole human race. Lord Krishna's teachings to Arjuna at the critical moment of his despair in the battlefield of Kurukshetra bear great spiritual and moral significance and values which are relevant today. It contains a discussion about morality, immortality of action, position of soul, duty and non-duty. The ethical view of the Gita and its philosophical realizations are accepted by every caste and creed. It is a philosophy of becoming. That Gita tries to build up a philosophy of karma based on jnana and supported by bhakti in a beautiful manner. The richest philosophical work is the Gita is a beautiful synthesis of diverse values of human life and reveals in the way to tackle a difficult situation in any context. The ethics of the Gita is one kind of motivating ethics which is needed for social development, and the Gita provides such vibration of our life in every crucial step of our day-to-day life. We can take the help of the Gita in order to find out a proper guide and solution. The Gita teaches us to accept what is natural and unavoidable. Death, for example, is the most natural and inevitable phenomenon. The Gita helps us to overcome the panic of death. Another important lesson taught to our society by the Gita, Nishkama Karma, this lesson plays vital role in our life. Nishkama Karma teaches us not only to perform our duties, it also teaches us to perform our duties without self-interest. Sri Krishna advises Arjuna to perform his duty to satisfy the interest of the other, not to satisfy his personal desires. Swami Vivekananda was greatly motivated by the teachings of the Gita. That is why he could speak, "The whole world is my family." He sacrificed his life for the betterment of the whole world. The ultimate Purushartha, moksha, can be attained following the teaching of the Gita. The Gita teaches us that our karma is not the cause of our bondage. The cause that leads us to bondage is the desire for fruit of our activities. So that desire has to be given up. But the desire comes when we think that we are the real doer. Our Kutrita Bhiman is the cause of our desire. In the Bhagavad Gita, sacrifice is taken as the essence of ethical life, which is treated as divine quality. Sacrifice is a great milestone for humanity, which is should achieved by heart and soul. Without the sense of sacrifice, an individual cannot able to think of serving others. If sacrifice does not find room in society, there might be conflict, violence, hatred, etc. in our society. The Gita teaches that practice of austerity is essential for bringing purification and perfection in an individual's thought, speech, and deed. The moral self does not become the slave of desire, but it stands as Jitatma. An individual who has Jitatma can construct a bridge between individualism and socialism. And that is the conclusion of my part. The Bhagavad Gita, with its inherent grandeur and flexible logic, makes it susceptible to diverse interpretations. The irremediable appeal of the teachings of the Gita and its far-reaching effects are, in fact, accompanied by humanistic motivation. The single force that nourishes its philosophical contents is nothing but man's effort to realize the potential greatness of humanity. The humanism of the Gita has a close rapport with the existential humanism of 20th century. Arjuna's despair has been compared by Dr. Radhakrishnan to the dark night of the soul, which is an essential step in the upward path of man. The Bhagavad Gita calls attention to man's ability to go beyond his present status and claims that the basis for this transcendence within man himself. It holds that man is the source and primary object of value. The Gita holds that man is not merely the body or senses, he is also the spirit. The Gita claims freedom to be the value of all values. Self-sacrifice means the battlefield of Kurukshetra is a ground where the temptations, passions, and brute motives are conquered, and man gradually elevates himself to attention to the state of God, which is also the other name of self-realizations. The Gita teaches us that the performance of good work promotes liberation and perfects one's spirit. The virtue of sameness is considered to be one of the great humanitarian ideal, and it is the basis of which the Gita declares that the service of humanity is the service of God. Today, our society is running through an acute value crisis, and it happens because at the present time, our education and culture are mainly influenced by materialism. We are hopeful that the Gita can provide our such society such type of spiritualistic teaching and culture, following which all problems regarding the crisis of value can be solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Shikha, for your paper. Have you read Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit?
No, ma'am. Sanskrit, I
You don't know Sanskrit.
clearly.
And Kha language and Khasa tribe, Jammu and Kashmir. Introduction. Today we can see that literature and media both playing very vital role in the forming good society throughout the world. The present scenario having more affiliation and inclination to the social media and literature is being put through online system in the digital form. The literature is available in different forms, and social media is taking every important step to transfer this traditional system into digital system. Role of literature, particularly, I will talk about the Khasa tribe or the Khasa language or Kha language. It is a literature.
The title of my paper is Tracing Althusser's Concept of Ideology in Mahashweta Devi's Sonadaini or West River. With the emergence of Marxism as a theory, the conjecture of writing, reading, thinking, and interpretation found a new trajectory all around the world. The concept of labor and class, which the bourgeois on the right laid out by Marx and Engels, revealed the phenomenon of the capitalist culture, which was slowly but steadily tightening its grip over all the societies across the world. The first generation Marxist theorists pointed out that with the industrial revolution that happened in Europe, how the medieval feudalism evolved into the capitalist concept of exploitation. But this evolution brought with it some intricate and complex apparatus. The capitalist leaders, unlike the feudalists, became well aware of these apparatus, and they started to promote their idea to be the idea of living for everyone in such a manner that this idea eventually started to be conceived as the way of living. This internalized flow of capitalist notions was identified by the second generation of school of Marxist theorists such as Althusser, Trotsky, and Lukács. With so much death and loss around after the Second World War and the emergence of the freedom fight of the colonized countries against the European colonial masters, people hardly could analyze the way the world was molding in. People were just looking forward to being free from all the repression and torture and wanted a life of peace and prosperity. The myth of communism eventually started to fade away with the de-Stalinization in Russia and around the second half of the 20th century with the establishment of the third world concept by the countries that earned freedom from being colonized. The world hoped for a new dawn to usher in. With the failure of the concept of American dream and socialism, people started to look forward to a more generous economic world order. They started to believe that to have a new work regime where the concept of slavery or the shadow of feudalism will be absent. The grasp of capitalism and the equation of consumerism were yet to be realized by the people of the newly free countries, for they were submerged with the dream to build a new nation, a nation of their own without any repression and dictation. Louis-Pierre Althusser, a French Marxist philosopher, came out with the concept of ideology around 1970. With this concept, he started to argue that everyone from birth to death is controlled by the capitalist ideological apparatus of the state. Althusser divides these apparatuses into two categories: repressive state apparatus, that is RSA, and an ideological state apparatus, that is ISA. Althusser says the state nurtures and conditions its subjects, that is the people of the state, with ISA, that is schools, church, family, etc., which are formally perceived to be functional outside the state control, but they only provide the values of the state's autonomy. Althusser clarifies that the state which uses its RSA, that is army, the police, the judiciary, the prison system, only in need when there is any kind of revolutionary act like questioning the authority. Althusser points out the potential threat the IPA holds and describes how people as the subjects of the state remain inside the web of power forever. In Mahashweta Devi's breast giver, people of two families are dependent and connected by the body, the breast specifically of Jashoda. Everyone finds the use of her breast effective in terms of profit and pleasure one way or another. Her populous body, her envious mammal projections become the object of the gaze for her husband and the people of the Haldar family, a target to feast upon. It is noteworthy to notice how the entire stage is set for a woman to step into the patriarchal snare of body politics where she has no hint of exploitation she has agreed to go through with pride. And thus, Jashoda becomes the goddess of the giver and finds illumination by saying, I quote, "Does it hurt a tree to bear fruit?" Jashoda is convinced that she must reproduce and her reproduction paves the way for the production of food in her family. As Althusser points out about the IPA, in this story we can imagine the temple and the two families as the active IPA and the people related to the temple and the members of the family as the working agents of this apparatus. The deceiving power of this ideology of the state makes Jashoda proud. Maybe that was in the support of her existential battle against poverty and hunger for her family. Still, there was multi-layered exploitation where ideology sets its claws and prospered over Yashoda until it was completely utilized. She has been constantly used as a source of pleasure of bodily fulfillment by her husband and a point of emancipation from all the trouble without disturbing the production of progeny for her mistress, Mrs. Haldar. And she has done all these things with a sense of pride and responsibility. Maybe she was unable to recognize the folly of this capitalist pattern, or she submitted herself before the superstructure, even if it has cost her life. Conclusion: The ideological tool is providing constant acceleration to the capitalist wheel, and with advancing time, the capitalist masters are using this tool with more professionalism. In this perspective, Spivak notes Anne Ferguson on conceiving motherhood, as Ferguson says, and I quote, "This is that women as mothers are placed in a structural bind by mother-centered infant and small child care, a bind that ensures that mothers will give more than they get in the sex-affective parenting triangle in which even lesbians and single parents are subjected. It is the usage of ideological apparatus by the state that generalizes the concept of motherhood and depicts motherhood under the capitalist lens. In this respect, one can easily look back at what Spivak commented in Breast Stories, and I quote, "The lesson of Stanodayini may be simply this: when the economics such as here shown in terms of the woman's body enters in, mothers are divided, women can exploit, not merely dominate. Ideology sustains and interpenetrates this operation of exploitation." Here are the references, and thank you.
Thank you, Partho, for a wonderful paper. Now, I'd like to request Mohammad Muzamil Shahil to present his paper.
Dr. Purvasha, am I
Yes.
audible? I got disconnected because of power cut. Can you give me the name of the previous speaker's paper? Debnath.
Partho Debnath.
What was the name of his paper?
Tracing Althusser's concept of ideology in Mahashweta Devi's Stanodayini, Breast Giver.
And what is the first part you said? Althusser's.
Yes.
So it's
the title of my paper is Articulating Ayurvedic Benevolence and Mythical Science in the Altered Narratives of Amish Tripathi's Shiva Trilogy. Just 1 second. The Oxford Dictionary defines Ayurveda as a traditional Hindu system of medicine incorporated in Atharva Veda, the last of the 4 Vedas, which is based on the idea of balance in bodily systems and uses diet, herbal treatment, and yogic breathing. It focuses on health and hygiene of the human self. The enriching Vedas have depicted the importance of Ayurvedic science and its implications for the benefit of the human body and soul. The paper attempts to analyze and explore the mythoscientific perspectives in Shiva Trilogy. It focuses on the aspects of Ayurvedic benevolence and its importance through the lens of scientific possibilities. It will focus on Ayurveda as a scientific medicinal tool to cure human beings and to bestow them with the longevity of lives with references to Shiva Tripathi select novels. Mythical science is the perspective which analyzes the scientific benevolence in myth. The Hindu mythological tales are known for its references to test tube babies, applications of plastic surgeries, quantum physics, and so on. The scientists of the earlier times in India have derived the effective theories on mathematics, astronomy, and chemical sciences for the well-being of the humans. Vedic astrology emerged much earlier to other rational science. The topic which I have chosen is from the novels by Amish Tripathi. Amish Tripathi is an eminent mythologist and contemporary writer. His novels are highly researched novels on the Indian mythology. The author has reimagined the imagination of the Hindu divines. He has altered the traditional mythological narratives and twisted the stories with a contemporary touch. The magical occurrence of the mythical happenings is answered and resolved in his novels. The select novels highlight the use of Ayurvedic science and yoga in maintaining the healthy body of its people. The research paper also aims at focusing the aspects of Ayurvedic benevolence and its importance through the lens of scientific projections. The select novel encompasses with the story of the Meluhans. The Meluhans are the people of Meluha ruled by the Emperor Daksha. They are known for their Ayurvedic practices and hospital facility. The story focuses to the times of 1900 BC in India. Shiva, the protagonist of the story, is a tribal man from the land of Mansarovar, Tibet. He is well known to all for his expertise skills in war tactics. He is called by Daksha to protect them from the evil. The Meluhans assumes the Nagas, the section of people from Hachavati, as evil, whereas Shiva with his wit discovers the real evil, which is the Somras. The Somras has beneficial properties only if it is consumed limitlessly, it is harmful for the body. Somras is the divine drink of immortality and can also be called as the blissful medicinal proportion which enhances life. It slows down the aging process. It cures many types of diseases. It releases oxidants from the body. The Somras, when consumed, reacts with the oxidants, absorbs them and expels them from the body as sweat and urine. In the novel, Meluhans who consumes the Somras and Somras acts as an Ayurvedic tool in presenting a person with a long life. It is energy which keeps a living organism alive. Energy acts as the prime resource that helps in activating all the inner organisms. The food stores energy within it, and when it is consumed, acquired by a human, it acquires the energy. It is this stock energy of the food that helps in proper functioning of the human being. The food that is consumed by the living organism is converted into energy by the air inhaled by the humans. The oxygen reacts with the food and releases energy from it. The oxygen which releases energy from food helps in keeping a person alive. Moreover, it is also the factor that causes aging to them. When the oxygen reacts with the food, it releases energy from it and simultaneously releases free radicals called oxidants, which are toxic in nature. And Somras reacts with these harmful oxidants, which are toxic in nature, and releases those oxidants from the body in the form of sweat and urine. This is the medicinal role played by Somras. The blissful heavenly drink Somras manufactured by the Meluhans for its people has an essential purpose in reacting against these oxidants produced by the human body and discards is in the form of sweat or urine. It is for its function of performing the role of antioxidant and bestowing the one who consumes it with long life. It is assumed as a blissful heavenly drink or potion. Somras also has a mythical tale associated with it. The land of the Meluha shares the myth of Somras. The Shiva mythology reveals that at the time of conflict between the Devas and Asuras for nectar and poison of the divine snake Vasuki, there was a churning of the ocean of milk. The Devas as the winners were to drink nectar and Asuras were to drink poison. Soon after drinking poison, the Asuras began to fall into asphyxiation, but one Asura, Rahu, conspired to drink nectar in the guise of a god. When this was known to the gods, Rahu's head was slitted by the gods to make him feel immortality, but the poison that was still flowing was consumed by Lord Shiva with the advice of Brahma. As this was known to Parvati, she was alarmed and gripped her husband's neck with both hands to stop the poison before its entry into the stomach. Parvati saved Shiva in her form as Mahaditya Tara. From this incident, the Shiva's throat became blue due to the reaction of halahala and is also known as Nilkant. In fact, taking these mythical perceptions in his imagination, Amish Tripathi has experimentally fictionalized the myth of Lord Shiva and his bruised neck in the drinking of Somras by the Meluhans. In the presentation of myth, Tripathi has comprehended the therapeutic effect of Somras, a kind of clinical potion, and scientifically a poison for the long life of the Meluhans. Neem leaf is another depiction of Ayurvedic medicine. There are others also in the novel, such as the Sanjeevani leaves, and those leaves were like herbal plants were used and applied by the Meluhans for long life. In the conclusion, it can be analyzed that the Meluhans are rich in the Ayurvedic resources. The appliances of the Ayurvedic treatment in the select novels formulate the fact that Ayurveda is much rich than other source of treatment or therapies, offering no negative or side effect to the plants. Indeed, in the contemporary reality, Ayurveda has reached the summit of effective cure. The mythical Ayurvedic medicines such as the Sanjeevani leaves are analyzed. Thus, through the select novels, the Ayurvedic benevolence and a mythical science can be articulated. Behind the mythical property of any herbal medicine, there are hidden scientific chemistry which works under the veil of magic. Thank you.
And the title of the paper is Analyzing Search of Roots in Paul Auster's Moon Palace. Paul Auster is a postmodern and American writer who has written a famous novel which is named as Moon Palace. Moon Palace is a novel written by Auster, and the paper presents the glimpse in which we see the morning over the loss of roots in Moon Palace. Human life is not a bed of roses. It's full of challenges and uncertainties. Here we find a character whose life is fully uncertain and who struggles for all life. A person needs a social and emotional security and stability while facing all this. But it is not so easy to find such stability in this world. Postmodern world is harsh, as we see in this novel. A person who is living without knowing his origin or identity remains a hopeless creep during his all life. His life is rudderless boat, which may go into any direction, sink anywhere in the ocean of life. Moon Palace is a major work written by Paul Auster. And in this novel, he presents a character. He has delineated a character whose name is Marco Stanley Fogg. He is a character who knows nothing about his origin. When the novel starts, we see that Fogg starts characterizing himself as an agitated and disillusioned man. I was very young back then, but I did not believe there would be a future. He accepts himself a great activist when he is a student. He seems to be disillusioned and reluctant to tell much about his life and experience. He passes his adolescence to enter adulthood, but he is unaware of his roots. He knows only about his mother, who nourishes her. He only knows about his mother, who never reveals anything about her husband or Fogg's father. He is a student at university and stuck in student revolt, which makes his life tough. Those were difficult days for everyone, of course. I remind them a tumult of politics and crowd. I'm not planning to discuss any of that here, I unquote. As said before, the year 1960 were commonly known as the time culminated in global instability and flux. And the Fogg is outcome of that. His life remained worry-worn and trouble-torn. So he keeps adjusting and changing himself according to the need of time. He becomes orphaned at the age of 11 as his mother dies in an accident. He is uprooted from his origin and only existence, which he knows that his mother is related and the only person who is related to him in this world. It brings a tragic turning point in his life, but he accepts it as his fate. He tries to be fluid to move on for a better life. He goes to live in Chicago with his uncle Victor. Living there, he comes to know about the character of Uncle Victor. He is a loving man, no doubt, but he is not fully connected with Fogg. He tries to be fluid to move on for a better life, but there are so many challenges. When he turns of 18, he goes to New York for study. Uncle Victor, a musician, is only ruling person in his life by making deficient acumen in selection of his spouse. Moreover, sometimes he prefers to leave Fogg behind when he gets a chance to go on tour or outside the country with orchestra rises. At least he was not the most dependable person in Fogg's life. Here also, Fogg remains rootless. He has no root, no existence, no life to live. Victor fails to provide Fogg a suitable advice at some times. when he clearly tells him that everyone is the author of his own life. Folk starts to run on the path which he neither has and which has neither any ending nor any destination. He behaves like a protean man. Instead of being audacious with his destiny, he takes his uncle's advice as an encouragement for him to run. Another instance of misfortune falls upon him when he leaves the college. His life becomes naughty. He leaves the college and he becomes homeless. Finally, he has to sell all the books gifted by Uncle Victor to serve as bond between present and former generation. He turns out to be a nihilistic project for surviving in a better way. But after some time, he's expelled from his apartment and he becomes a hopeless person. This occurrence upon his life, his self-divestiture and denial of work to support society present a regularity of disagreement with authority during this protest. This time he is uprooted once more, without having any ray of hope for a better and stable life. Being uncertain about the future, he tries to rebuild his destiny. His friend Zimmer and his another friend Kitty Wu helps him to find a pathetic life, escape him from a pathetic life. He goes through some harsh experience of life. Finally, he gets a job in the house of Thomas Effing, who later revealed as his grandfather. He is a caring person. Folk learns to perceive artistic thoughts and put them into words. He also learns potential and important political lessons in mentorship of Effing. Thus comes to a conclusion that no two entities are alike. Fogg learns to describe his surrounding in a very aesthetic manner. Effing is an aristocratic figure who grew up in elegant and sophisticated people, but he is very down to earth. Fogg learns that Effing was a quite opposite to him. Effing is carrying patriarchy presentation, while Fogg is a young bird who has lack of experience. Their unity is an old combination, but still Fogg tries to adjust to find a place to fix his roots somewhere. Fogg feels that instead of this disposition, something may be learned by acting upon the word that Effing tells to him. Here, Oster provides a didactic aspect wherein Effing teaches something which Fogg does not know. As a result, they establish a hierarchical relationship with one another. Fogg is oftenly keen to find object of knowledge instead of subject. Effing was my hair, he got the whip I flayed myself with. Fogg develops the idea that the poor automatically deserved consideration over the rich. Later, he discovered, Effing tells him about his son, Solomon Barber, who is later discovered as biological father of Fogg. After Effing's death, Fogg gets a huge sum of money and his pessimistic life turns into a bright present and brighter future. Somehow he becomes able to face challenge of life in a better way. He starts his life with Kitty Wu, his friend, in the hope that he would get a family and its affection from which he was always abundant. He does not demand much, but a life known as a modern day Voyager's life. When Kitty Wu is expected, Fogg gets excited to undo the loneliness of his childhood, to be a part of family, to belong to something that was more than his. He assumes his fatherhood, his new life, and his destiny, but shatters away when Kitty denies all this and aborts his child. It disconnects him from his existence of ancestry. One day, he visits his mother's grave with Barber and discovers that the Solomon Barber is his father. He reveals in the fit of anger, I quote, "My origin was mystery. This was that defined me, and by now I was used to my own darkness." I unquote. A shock had been sent through my either system, and I did not know how to absorbed below. I unquote. Thus, Fogg finally comes to a conclusion that his life is a clean slate, that his ancestry did not determine it. So he is uprooted from his place due to lack of stability in his relations with his ancestors and other person who claims to love him. No one has designated a space for him in his life or in this world. He has no roots to flourish the tree of his life. He turns to be the author of his own life, stuck in bewilderment, and ends in narrative saying, I quote, "This is where my life begins." It also leaves him materially and socially impoverished. Thus, the novel, the paper presents Auster's idea that Fogg's life is entirely full of sorrows, uncertainties. The origin of a person's play a wonderful and strong role to provide a stability in one's life. A person finds it hard to exist in society without being connected to his roots. Fogg searches for his identity and longs for stability in his whole life, but he is not able to establish stability in life. These are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pooja Kumari, for your presentation. Now I'd like to request.
His ideas and ideals have great relevance to the current problem challenging in India and the world present day. He was a prophet who has preached the India's culture, the secret of world peace and equality. His humanism transcended the bound of caste, creed, and nationality. Humanism of Swami Vivekananda was not enclosed to the national scene only. It had its wider range in trying to earn international solidarity and brotherhood. Vishwam Ekam Nidam. The world is a nest. In this way, Vivekananda is very much alike with Tagore. Although they are not same, Tagore's conception of humanism also had tried to achieve international solidarity and brotherhood. This Vasudhaiva Kutumbakama, the cosmos is one family. Vivekananda was strongly influenced by the ancient Hindu philosophy, especially Vedanta. The exposition of Vedanta by Vivekananda is called practical or new Vedanta. He impressed by the Vedanta's teaching of oneness. Oneness includes all animals. Vivekananda says there is one life, one world, one existence. Everything is one. Difference is 1 degree and not in kind. Vivekananda was influenced by Buddhists also. Vivekananda says the great glory of Buddha lay in his wonderful sympathy for everybody, especially for the ignorant and the poor. Perhaps Vivekananda was the first Indian to use the word Daridra Narayan, God manifested in the poor. Above all, Vivekananda was deeply influenced by his master, Ramakrishna Paramhans, who had taught him the divinity of the soul, the non-duality of Godhead, the divinity of existence, and one more great teaching, that is the universality or harmony of all different religions. Vivekananda wanted unity of all religion into one universal religion. The sole object of universal religion is nothing, respect for religious divinity and acceptance of religious pluralism. Universal religion, as Vivekananda perceived, is a discovery of unity in all religion. In Vivekananda's speech, to find the term service or seva from Christianity, Vivekananda takes up the ideals of service or love. That is why he set up the Ramakrishna Mission on May 1897, which sole motive was service to mankind. He tells, where do you search after God? He is present before you in myriad forms. One who loves all beings serves God. He further says, the living God is within you, and yet you are building churches and temples in and believing all sorts of imaginary nonsense. The only God to worship is the human soul in the human body. In a similar way, Tagore never suggests that the body is an illusory or false aspect of man's life. On the other hand, it has been conceived as the temple of the divine. Tagore thinks that God is to be found not in temples or mosques, but in humanity itself. In conclusion, remarks, I would like to highlight some insightful speech of Vivekananda's thinking about humanism, by which he easily determined what he wanted to understood by the term humanism. Vivekananda highlighted the concept of universal religion. His concept of universal religion was based on the belief that God manifests himself through all beings. By universal religion, he means religious divinity. Man is the central pillar of his life. According to Vivekananda, worship of God meant loyalty and service to the mankind, and believe that service of mankind as the best way to serve God. So he quoted, বহুরূপের সম্মুখে তোমারি ছাড়ি কোথায় খুঁজিছ ঈশ্বর জীবে প্রেম করে যেইজন সেইজন সেবিছে ঈশ্বর. That is to say, where do you search after God? He is present before you in myriad forms. One who loves all beings serve God. Here Vivekananda focused the true love on the human being. To sum up, we can say that a short span of 39 years and 7 months, Vivekananda showed to the world the dignity of human soul and the potentiality of the being, a path of enlightened citizenship. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Tahajul Hussain, for your wonderful paper. Now I'd like to request Himangi Rao to present her paper on imprints of dysfunctional family and exploration through Anita Desai's novel Cry the Peacock.
Hello, am I co-host now? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, you are a co-host.
I would like to share my PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, please.
Everyone, I am Mrs. Himangi Rao, Assistant Professor, Department of English from Shardabai Pawar Mahila Mahavidyalay, Shardanagar, Baramati, from Maharashtra. I'm here to present my paper on the topic Imprints of Dysfunctional Family and Exploration through Anita Desai's novel, Cry the Peacock. The discussion content will be, first, what does it mean for a family to be a dysfunctional family? What are the contributions of a family to the development of children? How is Sita's family in Cry the Peacock dysfunctional and how it affects her? Is dysfunctional family a common societal issue? And what are some good ways of parenting to develop an individual? What does it mean for a family to be a dysfunctional family? McGraw-Hill has termed it as a family with multiple internal conflicts. Example, siblings rivalries, parent-child conflicts, domestic violence, mental illness, single parenthood, or external conflicts like example, alcohol or drug abuse, extramarital affairs, gambling, unemployment, influences that affect the basic needs of the family unit. Relationships between family members are tense and can be filled with neglect, yelling, and screaming. You might feel forced to be happily accept the negative treatment. There's no open space to express your thoughts and feelings freely. You aren't able to thrive and feel safe within your own family. Sometimes the adults in these families have an authoritarian, my way or the highway parenting styles, or have a toxic or abusive relationship with others. So what should be the contributions of a family to a development of a child or children? Feelings of security of being a member of a stable family, people on whom children can rely to meet their needs, physical and psychological, sources of affection and acceptance regardless of what they do, models of approved pattern of behavior for learning to be social, guidance in the development of socially approved pattern of behavior, People they can turn for help in solving the problems every child faces in adjustment to life, guidance and help in learning skills, motor, verbal, and social needed for adjustments, stimulation for their abilities to achieve success in school and in school life. Aid in setting aspirations suited to their interest and abilities. Sources of companionship until old enough to find companions outside the home or when outside companionship is unavailable. The role of literature. The emotions of human being are embodiment of human behavior and the ways of expressing self in the refined culture. The novel is a means of expression for the writer to visualize what he had experienced, seen, and heard. According to Srinivas Iyengar, the novel is a living and evolving literary genre and is trying in the hands of its practitioners a fusion of form, substance, and expression that is recognizably Indian, yet also bearing the marks of universality. Margaret Atwood rightly states in Survival, literature is not only a mirror, it is also map, geography of mind. Our literature is one such map if we learn to read it as a literature as the product of who and where we have been. We need such a map desperately. We need to know about here, but here is where we live. For the members of a country or culture, shared knowledge of their place, they are here is not a luxury, but a necessity. Without that knowledge, we will not survive. How is Sita's family in Cry the Peacock dysfunctional and how it affects her? I'll be just going in short about the novel. Maya, being a motherless child, she's looked after by her father with great love and affection. She also has an attachment with her brother initially, but as she says that she has been brought up by her father with a very overprotective nature, and she's said as a toy princess. So she says that she's enjoyed everything. But later when she comes to experience something with her husband, Gautama, she gets married only because of her father. She gets married to a age-old person who is double of her age, marries that person, but she is not in cordial relation, or they do not have that harmonious relation in their marriage. So every moment she tries to compare her present with her husband, with her past, like the behavior of her father and her husband, and the facilities and the love and affection what her father had showered on her was been expected same as from her husband. Yes, this has created an Electra complex in her. So she believes that her childhood days were the happiest moments of her life, which she is unable to overcome with Gautama, who is a very rational person. Also, his family was very different from what Maya was. She tried to find her mother in her mother-in-law, but her mother-in-law was always busy in the household and with her social work. Whereas Gautama's father was also out of the house. Like Gautama also did not spend much of the time in the house. So she was feeling alienated and she was lonely. So she tried to convey her feelings to Gautama, but he considered that it was her father who was responsible, that she's turning her behavior as a neurotic behavior, which was rooted in her father fixation. So she was unable to cope up with this. And then this indifferent behavior of Gautama and his father withdraws Maya herself from the rest of the family, and she starts recollecting all her past memories of how her father had fulfilled all her demands. She looks at the world through her father's lens, which he had portrayed for her. Like a toy specially made for me, printed in my favorite colors, set moving my favorite tunes. Later, Arjuna, she gets a letter from Arjuna, her brother, whom she was very close, and she, being a motherless child, she was very friendly with her brother, but he was a rebel from his very childhood, and with his conflicts with his father, he had left his house, and she was left all alone with no companions. So suddenly one day when she gets a letter from her brother, again, the childhood memories trigger in her, and the psychological affection and the needs what are being frustrated while living with Gautama are arose when she receives the letter. So all these three men in Maya's life were responsible for turning her neurotic. Rather, it's put on to her that she is a neurotic child pampered by her father. But I would say that it was all these three men in her life who could not understand her psychological needs, her proporium to be grown well and proper according to the psychology and the sociological aspect, like her father who had pampered her or who has kept her alone in the house and onto his terms and conditions. So Maya's situation after he leaves the house, when he's after Arjuna, when he's aware of her father's money-mindedness, thus Maya, who lacked maternal love, could not withstand the circumstances befell in her life. With all these factors, she was haunted by the Albino's prophecy about the death of either partner after 4 years of her marriage, when she was in a very teenage. She had been to the temple and the prophecy was been told to her there. So somewhere these childhood memories were collected in her mind, and they all had turned up and triggered up due to the lack of companionship, due to the lack of affection and love and the attention by the in-laws and her husband. As motherless child, Gautama was more attached to her father. As I said, she always expected the same love and priority and care from Gautama, but Gautama was unable to reciprocate any love to her, and this pains her a lot. So as indicated by Gautama that she has been pampered by her father, Maya's father who created stories for her, fairy tale for her, and she unknowingly, these were planted into her mind, and these seeds of fantasies were grown into her mind. Also, his overprotectiveness had resulted in Maya being always a child at heart. And whenever she faces the adversities, her inner self is torn and unable to mend itself. Her illusion fantasies had made her herd well into an imaginary world. She finds it too hard to confront the real world. She seeks only happiness, which is delusionary, as Gautama rightly points out, as a crime. Now, we see some of these. So these are some societal issues we can say, or dysfunctional family issues we see in the society nowadays also. Yes, we see most of the times families are with conflicts because of the stress, maybe the job related stress or the new arrival of a new baby stress and the relationship stress. Excessive unrelenting stresses put the family at the risk and they are at trouble. So family reacts to that stress in a very different manner. Sometimes if it is a healthy family, it takes in a very different way. But the families who are not able to handle the stress, they turn into the dysfunctional families. So all families face problems like financial concerns, relationship issues, children's behavior problems, lack of cooperation, lack of alone time as a couple, lack of time for yourself, household chores, overscheduled activities, lack of time for playing, work problems, and guilt for not being able to do it at all. Sometimes we see because of this stress, the parents turn into authoritative parents, and these authoritative parenting styles lead to the children who are very obedient and proficient, but they rank lower in happiness, social competence, and self-esteem. Then some parents take it in the other way, not being authoritative, being permissive. This results in the low rank of happiness and self-regulation of the children, and the children are more likely to experience problems with authority, and they tend to perform poorly in school. Uninvolved parenting style rank lowest across all life domains. These children tend to lack self-control, have low self-esteem, and are less competent than their peers. The impacts. Adults
Ma'am, can you please wrap up your paper in 1 minute?
Okay. So the impacts are that it creates the adults, when they grow up, they are not able to put their families in the proper order. So it gets carried over from their generations to generations, certain habits and certain relationship problems. So if they are grown in a dysfunctional family, they are not able to have their own family as a healthy family, or they are tend to have some psychological disorders among themselves, which ultimately the family members have to suffer for it. So it's very difficult to develop a proper self-esteem in a dysfunctional family. So some of the good ways I have given: take responsibility, seek help, get creative, build trust, build bridges with your family, stop trying to be perfect, realize that you're not in control of other people's life, don't try to win the old struggles. And if you're feeling that you're going to the old pattern, don't get frustrated and discouraged. You have to change. Change is very important here. So why this is necessary? Because it all impacts the children in the family, and the childhood, what the child spends in the dysfunctional family is carried over to have an influence in his adult life also. So shaping his personality, as what Freud says. So sometimes overprotectiveness also hinders the development. Sometimes the functionality or the conflicts in the families also hampers the childhood and the personality development of a child as a good adult. So, and these, because memories are there, memories get carried over. So the childhood memories may have the you may have sore experiences, may have pleasant, but then you have a comparison of with these memories when you grow up as an adult. So to give good memories dominate our lives. Of course, that is why we should have good relationship, have a good and a healthy family, so that the further generation coming up, even though we were from a dysfunctional family, we need not to put the same for the further coming generation, which will ultimately be a good source or a good humans for the society, because it impacts the society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Himangi Raul, for your paper. It's really interesting. The next paper presenter.
My name is Nafia Akhtar, and I'm a research scholar in the Department of English, Lovely Professional University. The title of my paper is Impact of Media on Society, a study of select works of Don DeLillo. The present paper, entitled The Impact of Media on Society, a study of select works of Don DeLillo, aims at unraveling the effect of media on the postmodern fictional world of Don DeLillo. The paper makes a candid attempt through the lens of Baudrillard's theory of hyperreality to study the American society as represented in the works of DeLillo, that is entangled in the web of media and technology. Baudrillard is of the view that hyperreality results in the overpowering effect of technology on the society, where media plays a pivotal role in molding and filtering what is there in the real world, and it substitutes with the mediated real called the hyperreal. The society also studies how the technology affects the behavior and outlook of the characters as well as the society. Media in the novels of DeLillo is pervasive. We can sense the presence of media in various forms at one point or the other. The characters respond as per the media codes. DeLillo has been regarded as one of the key postmodern writers who has extensively used in order to showcase the contemporary society bombarded with the codes and signs propagated through consumeristic setup, media, advertisements, etc. From his very first novel, Americana, following the creation of a self-referential road movie by the main character, to Falling Man, focusing on the post-9/11 American society and the ungraspable void left behind by the disappearance of the Twin Towers. DeLillo's prose is overloaded by the presence of the media in all its obvious forms. His characters are built and developed through their connections to mass media, with which they often have a contradictory relationship. The television screen in particular is frequently used as a means of self-reflection, a mirror that mediates self-analysis. In Simulacra and Simulations, the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard presents how reality is replaced by symbols and signs in contemporary society, and experience has become a simulation of reality, substituting the reality itself. The symbols and signs that he's referring to are mostly created by the media that is responsible for constructing the perceived reality, which no longer has anything to do with the actual reality. The media's prevalent role in shaping reality through simulations and affecting the daily processes of the characters is unavoidable in the works of Delillo. Media permeation in Underworld and Mao Second. In Underworld, the tape of a shooting committed by a serial murderer called the Texas Highway Killer is shown relentlessly during news bulletins, and the son of the main character, Nick Shea, chooses to record it and watch it even more, memorized by the power of pure and aimless violence. I quote, "It shows something awful and unaccompanied. You want your wife to see it because it is real time, no fancy movie violence. Hurry up, Janet, here it comes. He dies so fast." You want to tell her it is realer than the realer, but then she will ask what that means, unquote. The constructive nature of media discourse is in shaping reality, or rather what Baudrillard would call a simulation of reality or hyperreality, can be traced in how the continual replay of the recorded murder confirms and legitimizes the event as reality and significant. Moreover, I quote, "Taping and playing intensifies and compresses the event, and it dangles a need to do it again," unquote. By being reproduced and replayed in the media persistently, the killing seems to gain its substance and meaning. It becomes a famous murder because of its horrifying nature, but also because it is on the tape and it was filmed. In other words, the medium by which it is presented and the information about how the tape was recorded intervene in how it is perceived by the audience. The inherent connection between the event and its presence on the screen makes Delillo's characters wonder whether such a crime would be possible in case there's no access to the means of disseminating duplications of the tape. The case for the strong effects of media consumption on the viewer and the increase in violent behavior as a result of exposure to violence in the media has been supported by several media analyses in the past. However, in Underworld, the result of repeated exposure to a brutal incident captured in film is not the viewer's tendency to emulate what happens on the screen, but seemingly leads to what Baudrillard calls as anesthetization of reactions. The more you watch the tape, the deader and the colder and more relentless it becomes. The tape sucks the air out of your chest, but you watch it every time. A pervasive presence in most of the Delillo's novel televised media felicitates self-reflection, functioning as a mirror in which characters are discovering themselves and the reality around them. However, as both Baudrillard and Delillo seems to suggest, this reflected reality is nothing more than a simulation conceived solely for the purpose of mediation with no connections to any true referent. Defined by Baudrillard as hyperreality, this media-created perception of the self and the world nevertheless ends up replacing the character's own experience and functions as a self-referential indicator of what is called as real. As revealed through the exploration of relevant fragments from several novels by Delillo, the media-saturated society pictured in various fictional frames represent nothing more than a hands-on enactment of Baudrillard's theory regarding the disappearance of the real in favor of the sign or the hyperreal. In Mao Second, another novel of Delillo, Delillo primarily builds through its discussions, imitations, and reworking of the representational strategies of television, photography, and painting. The narrative includes extensive description and actual reproduction of TV and press images, as well as meta-representational passages that depict how characters compulsively watch TV. Since the characters in the novel frequently talk about the cultural work of specific media, about the relation between mass media and art, and about the intersection of the economics, politics, and aesthetics, it is tempting to think that the ideas expressed by the characters would cohere into an authorial statement about the role of literature in contemporary American society. Initially, Bill's boycott of media circus reflected his individual sensibilities and political convictions. He was a young man, inexperienced, wary of machinery of gloss distortion, protective of his work, and very shy and slightly romanticized and self-romanticizing, unquote. The obvious parallel to this substitution of an actual event by a media orchestrated spectacle is TV news coverage. I quote, "We do not even need catastrophes necessarily. We only need the reports and predictions and warnings," Scott observes later in the conversation, unquote. People ultimately allow media to manipulate their decisions. They turn to magazines and televisions to be told what to buy. They turn to the news media to be told what stories are important. They turn to the film industry and popular television shows to be told how to believe, how to behave. They want to be exploited and manipulated. Baudrillard's theory fits very well into Delillo's critique of television and mainstream media. In Baudrillard's essay, The Precision of Simulacra, he asserts that, I quote, "It is TV that is true, it is TV that renders true," unquote. The post-war American public has developed a media fetish. The result is that Americans have entered into the concrete bond with the media in which they have given upon their right to decide for themselves in exchange for the perceived benefits derived from the hegemony of media power. Karen in Mao Second watches TV news coverage of the Tiananmen Square massacre, of the soccer stadium disaster, and the Khomeini's funeral. The television and press media do not merely accompany the text serving as illustrations then, but are fully integrated into plots and themes. Jan Baudrillard was profoundly influenced by Debord's school of thought. In his 1981 treatise, Simulacra and Simulation, he expounds upon the notions that reality has been replaced by science and symbol society, and ultimately concludes that simulation has replaced reality. For Baudrillard, Simulacra refers to copies without original, to appearances that dictate a mode of being without actually participating in the act of being. I quote, "Signs become more real than reality and stand in for the world they erase," unquote. Baudrillard's influence on Delillo frequently appears in his constructions of characters who are detached from the hyperreal truth and is found only in the media. News reports on the television and radio are the communal agreement on events and happenings. And if something is not reported on, it may not well have happened. Television and radio project images and these characters used to construct their personal identities, which can also be detrimental hindrances to authenticity. Delillo seems to embrace this aspect, marveling at the complexity of the system and even advocating for the embracement of simulacra, vehicles of new knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Nafia. Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, the title of my paper is Living with the Virtual, Exploring Jean Baudrillard's Concept of Hyperreality in Paul Auster's Sunset Park. Abstract, employing Jean Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality as articulated within simulation and simulacra and linking it with the Paul Auster's Sunset Park, the article assesses the extent to which in the era of immersive virtual worlds, how these Baudrillardian notions may be used to critically assess literary works in terms of the significance of images of the past and virtualities in generating changing fictional tale worlds. Utilizing Paul Auster's Sunset Park as the instrument for analyzing Sunset Park can be therefore read as a persuasive critique of postmodern condition that blurs the distinction between the reality and the representation. This essay argues that the play of the science ruling Miles' life is evocative of Jean Baudrillard's thesis on hyperreality. Accordingly, it claims that Auster's novel critiques the entrapments of the contemporary world where human experience are shaped and governed by the hyperreal and the search for the meaning is futile. Paul Auster's Sunset Park is set in South Florida, where Miles has been scavenging foreclosed homes and clearing away everything left behind when the inhabitants were evicted before moving into the new home. Our Miles Heller, on the other hand, is sentimentally documenting whatever he discovers in abandoned houses. Unlike his Swedish colleagues who take away whatever they want, it would appear that, I quote, he has taken upon himself to document the last lingering traces of those scattered lives in order to prove that the vanished families were once here and the ghost of the family he will never see and never know are still present in the discarded things strewn about their empty houses. Auster. Miles' allusions to the ghost of the individuals that may be discovered in abandoned object is an indication of his affinity for the virtual affinity in some way. This is reminiscent of the Baudrillard's hypothesis on the history, cinema, photography, and the terrorism of the real in simulation and simulacra, where he argues photography contributed in larger part of the secularization of history to fixing it in its visible objective form. However, it only reoccurs, ghosts, and itself is lost therein. To think of the virtual is thus to think of the past. Miles truly recognizes that his photo taking is a pure virtual gesture, an empty pursuit of no possible benefit to anyone, because no material convenience will come out of it. Yet he does not know why things are calling out to him, speaking to me the voices of the people who are no longer there, asking him to look at one last time. Possibly he is searching for the images of the journal past, a whole temporal panorama, an unstable set of the floating memories, images of the past in journal, which moves past at a dizzying speeds as if times for achieving a profound freedom deluge. For Miles, such presence of the past is felt due to the virtual ghosts of the absent family members to whom he never will find chance to be introduced. As Hudson stated, that we have only access to the past today through its traces, its documents, the testimony of the witness, and the archival materials. But Hutchins says if the understanding of the past is constructed through its representations with his photographs, Miles is trying to recapture the shards of unfettered time, bringing it back to life. In addition to this, the same impact of the time aids the depiction of the social effects of the economic downturn. Due to the forced evacuation of the insolvent family homes, they had little time to pack and departed in a hurry. From here, the author's concern for the current situation in US society takes on a more grandiose dimension, staging itself through virtualities. Hence, postmodernism reveals a desire to understand present culture as the product of the previous representation. Hudson. Life. His guilt-ridden memory haunts him. Therefore, his guilt-ridden memory haunts him by the several level of the images, of the past. Therefore, upon brother's death, upon his brother's death, Miles loses his organizing principle in life and thus begins drifting away from his reality and self. Postmodernity is said to be a culture of fragmentary sensation, electric nostalgia, disposable simulacra, and promiscuous superficiality in which the traditional valued the qualities of the depth, coherence, meaning, originality, and the authenticity of the evacuated or dissolved amid the random swirl of the empty sign. Gauthier. As Gauthier above suggests, that postmodernity offers a world of the total disintegration and coherence. Miles walks away from his family home, leaving a letter behind. He says that when he settles somewhere, he will inform his family, however he states in the novel, I quote, over the past 7 years, he has settled at any number of the new address, but he still has not been in touch. These lines show breakup in Miles' personality and the process of neutralization. Subject reaches a level of desire as a result of disintegration in his personality. Typifying the postmodern condition, the hyperreal yields complete control over Miles' Heller. Whilst waiting for the lunch to be served, Miles learned that Teresa's husband has been serving in the Iraq for the past 10 months and that everyone is wishing him safe travel. In the wake of this, Miles is once again engulfed in another reality. Was it possible that Bush and Cheney would have been hanged and there would never be a war in Iraq? Science images what he creates for himself out of his confusion between the actualities and the virtualities. Miles, I quote, look down at the tablecloth again. He imagines George Bush and the Dick Cheney being lined up against a wall and shot for a pillar for the sake of everyone. He hopes that Teresa's husband will be lucky enough to make it back in one piece. In other words, Miles' way of thinking about Teresa's husband is closely related to the simulation process. He creates images which he tends to become hyper-reality, and then his own reality becomes barren. Miles is lost between the real and the unreal. Auster's Sunset Park systematically breaks down, among others, the word, the narrative, and the visual image as a stable differentials to reality. As a result, he uses the relationship between the real and virtual in his presentation of images. This is done by creating a circuit between the actual and the virtual image using the current representation. This is done by creating a circuit between the actual and virtual images using the current or actual description coupled with the statements about the past and the add virtual to the realities of the conflict. One of the Auster's narrative devices in the Sunset Park is the use of the actual and the virtual descriptions as the characters' brains wrestle with the various influence from their either history from their present past. Baseball has been always a special place in Auster's story in the Sunset Park. He came across the real names of the stars of the 1940s to the 1960s who have been exemplary pictures in the American Major League of the Baseball. A few days later, Miles learns about the death of one of his childhood hero. I quote, on the 11th, he read a newspaper that Herb Score had died. We can argue that the metafictional trait of the beginning, metafictional trait of metafictional technique of bringing real names into the fictional story world is a kind of adding an actual dimension to the virtual space. Herbert Jude scores. Death, on the other hand, recused to the story, and Auster utilizes this instance to further blend reality and virtuality. During one bus ride from Florida to New York, Miles recalls a conversation with his father in which he told him the story of the marriage to his mother and their subsequent divorce, which he relates in the other part of the novel. Mary's portrayal Lee as Cordelia in Shakespeare's King Lear sparked Maury's interest. He was blinded by, I quote, he was blinded by his step, by her talent. His father continues, anyone who could perform as he had in demanding delicate role must have had a great depth of heart and a wide range of feeling. This result in the Mary's Cordelia, who is the virtual version of Mary Lee. As a result, Mary's vision of Cordelia in his mind may be seen as a crystal clear image of the virtual self of Shakespeare's Cordelia. Due to Maury's fascination with the true contrast with the both sides of the shared picture and the confusion of the indiscriminately, this ultimate pledges to marry Miles more. For Baudrillard, hyperreality is all-absorbing concept and a universal form of postmodern condition in which the simulacra leaves out of representation and reality. Perry. As Baudrillard stated, hyperreal has even entered in our most private places, homes, as we are living in an age where there is a forced extroversion of all external and forced injection of all the exteriority. Sunset Park versus a hyperreal domains for the Miles. After moving to Sunset Park, the novel focus shift from his friends to his family. But today it's a very space of inhabitation that is conceived as a both receiver and distributor, as the space of both reception and operation, the control screen and terminal, which may have been endowed with telematic power, that is the capability of regulating everything from a distance, including work, in home, in force, consumption, play, social relations, and leisure. Here we are far from the living room and close to the science fiction, the Baudrillard, in the ecstasy of communication. He takes it for granted that the future is a lost cause and present is all matters. No, it must be present, imbibed with the spirit of the past. That is why he shuns cell phones, computer, and all digital things. Another character whose intuition pushes him towards the virtual is Renzo Michael. As a novelist, he is influenced by mother's life story. When he recalls he was engaged in a would-be actor's Hollywood actor whom she never married, Renzo decided to write an essay about the history to realize to what would have come from the marriage. This makes him develop a theory which coincides with the Auster's own assumption about the virtual reality, a reality in parallel with the Americans' life today, in which wars or capitalist ventures have no place, since it seems for the Auster that people deserve more than the wreck of the country have been inherited in terms of virtual reality. As Baudrillard suggests, that model has taken over the real, and consequently attaining the real has become a dream. Today, it is the real that has become the alibi of the model in a world controlled by the principle of simulation. To conclude, we see characters, action, and events in Paul Auster characters can be taken as a representative of Baudrillardian thought. In Sunset Park, that the notion of virtuality is growing by a diverse people, ideas, and acts that is strongly related to their picture of time and affection of the past. There are many instances in the life where the virtual is manifested as seen by the Miles state or the photographing Thrash's experiences with the picture Miles is trying to capture the fragment of the free time. Furthermore, Renzo Michael is a writer who also uses an old typewriter for creating his texts, and his upcoming essay is going to be about the virtual world that runs parallel to our real and sensible one. Renzo is the virtuality of the story. Ultimately, characters want something in between the past and the present at the same time. Thus, they use present, past, science images to reach the virtual realm and ultimately to be eligible to think about the Baudrillard notion of the virtual reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Arifa, for your presentation. It's really interesting. Now, I'd like to request Dr. Deepa Chakraborty to conclude this session.
Frankly speaking, I was just wondering, I mean, in such a short, session, so varied ideas have been put forward. I mean, if you look at the paper, the diverse themes that have been put forward, it has been a great experience for myself. And I'm sure that others too, starting from family, dysfunction of family, and then, talking about women education in India, and after Bhagavad Gita also came into being, and then what should be the language of study of philosophy? Should it be a ordinary day-to-day language in which we converse, or should it be a very specific scientific language? And then, many more, how memories play a vital role in a human child. And finally, whether he will be a successful man or a happy man. I mean, this is the happiness quotient that I found extremely important, that our unhappy child can never be very happy. And we as parents, we have to be very balanced in our treatment of our children. That particular paper I found very, very relevant in today's terms. And then a lot more were there, just to tell a few. And sometimes very famous philosophers, writers like Althusser, like Jean Baudrillard, they have came into the picture, which only tells us how good research is being carried out at this time. Thank you, Dr. Mondal.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your observation. And now I'd like to request Dr. J.H. Khatri to share his observation.
Good evening, all of you. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
As Deepa ma'am has rightly told, there is like a kind of bouquet of different ideas that has been presented in last 1.5 hours. We started with the feminist lens on the education in India specifically, and gradually we moved towards what we are living in, that is kind of the hyper reality. And in between, we dealt with the issues of text and hypertext and ethical philosophy in Bhagavad Gita, Ayurveda as expressed in Shiva trilogy. There has been a lot of things that we have been discussing. Most interestingly, the concept of ideology that is like applied on Mahashweta Devi's work. So there are a lot of things that we have been hearing, and it is a kind of matter of proud and privilege that we are exposed to so many new ideas. And I look forward to the next session. We are running short of time, so I don't take much of time. We'll just move to the next session. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khatri, for sharing your observation and insights with us. So our next session will start. We'll start from 15.
We have gone beyond the time.
Yes, we're running out of our time. So now we will take a short break, and we will come back in 1 minute.
In 1 minute?
Yes.
Continue.
Okay, we'll just leave and join.
Only 5 minutes time. Okay.
5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Dr.
So
Jha
here we conclude our session.
Again. And Prabhasa will be also joining with us again in the next session. So thank you, Professor Deepa Chakravarti, ma'am. Thanks a lot for being with us as the session chairperson in this conference. Thank you. Thank you all.